everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel Rather Be Reading, and today I'm bringing to you my January marked as to read video. In case you are new here, my marked as to read video is a series of videos that I do each month where I talk about all of the books that I was inspired to mark as to read on Goodreads throughout the month. So it's not a TBR video, it's not an anticipated releases video, it's just all books that I've heard about over the past month that I thought sounded interesting, and so I thought you guys might find interesting. They are all books that I want to read eventually, but who knows when I'll get to them, so it's not a TBR, but they are all books that I just thought sounded really cool, and so I wanted to highlight on my channel. So let's jump straight in. January is a very good month for marking books as to read or getting excited and hearing about new books, because not only do you have all of the favorites videos from the previous years, you're hearing about everyone's favorites, but then you've got all like lists of anticipated books for the upcoming year, and it's just a good time to hear about books that you may not have heard of before and get excited about them. So I marked a total of 15 books as to read in January, so let's talk about all of them. So the very first one that I marked as to read in January was from a Goodreads blog post that was about the most anticipated YA releases of 2020. And the book that I heard about from that list was, there were two that I heard about from that list. The first of those was The Fascinators by Andrew Eliopoulos. And this is a YA LGBT story that is described as being the Raven Boys meets Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, which sounds delightful. All I really know about it is it's about a boy who is in love with his best friend, and it also involves magic. I don't really know too much about it apart from that. That sounded very intriguing to me. And then the second one is a book that I'm sure you've all heard about being released. I hadn't heard anything about it until I saw this blog post, but now I've seen quite a few people talking about it, because that is The Nobleman's Guide to Scandal and Shipwrecks by Mackenzie Lee. This is the third book in the Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue series. This follows Monty's and Felicity's brother, but like much younger brother. It's Adrian, I think his name is, and it's following his story. So hopefully we'll get to see characters that we know from the first two books, but like much further on, so that's really exciting. I really enjoyed the first two books in that series, so I was excited to see that we were getting a third one in that series. The next book that I heard about was from another Goodreads blog post. This one was just generally for like anticipated 2020 releases, and there was this book on there called Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie Roble. And I was really intrigued about this one because it was compared to Sharp Objects and Something Else. It was described as like a mashup of those, but it's a thriller, and it's about a girl who believed that her whole life that she was really sick, was in a wheelchair, in hospital all the time. All of that kind of reminds me of that what's her name, that Gypsy Rose Blanchard type of situation. Is that the name? Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about probably. She discovers that she's not sick, and that her mother's been making her sick all of these years, and her mother goes to jail. And it's now 5 years later, and her mother has been released from jail, and her mother contacts her and asks her to take her in, and much to everyone's surprise, the main character agrees. And that is kind of where the story, I believe, takes off from. That sounds very, very, very interesting to me, so I marked that one as to read. The next one was from another Goodreads blog post. This one was for the highly anticipated mystery and thrillers of 2020, which you know is probably my favorite one to read because I love me some mystery thrillers. And the main one that I was interested in of that list was called The Sea of Lost Girls by Carol Goodman. This one is about a woman who has some kind of shady past, because doesn't everyone in thrillers? However, it's, she's come back from that shady life. She's now a wife of a professor at like a prestigious like elite boarding school, and then now she's also a teacher at the boarding school, and they have a son. However, the son is kind of troubled, and I think the son is now like 17 years old, and one day she gets a call from the son asking her to come help him, and she goes, and he's drenched in water, and he's got like a stain on his shirt, and she helps him, and then the next morning his girlfriend is found dead on the beach, and it's about that whole situation. That just sounds incredibly intriguing to me. Sounds right up my alley, so it definitely marks that one as to read. The next one is the first book in a series, and I heard about the series generally from Leanne over at Literary Diversions. I think it's a 5-book series. I think all the books are published. I think she was talking about the final book. But obviously I marked the first one because I haven't read the series. So it's a fantasy horror mystery series that I think it's set in the UK, and the UK is overrun by ghosts, and I think the main character is a psychic investigator. I don't really know too much about it apart from that, but it sounded like a lot of fun. Next is one that I heard about on Simon's channel from Savage Reads. He did a video with his mum. I love the videos that he does with his mum, and he did a video with her on her favorite reads of 2019, and one of her favorite books was Wakenhurst by Michelle Paver, and this just sounds so up my alley, like one of my ideal books, basically, because it's a historical gothic horror. Yes. I don't even really know what it's about, except that it's a historical gothic horror, and that it involves some kind of set around a family who live in some kind of manor home. I don't even really know any more details than that, but I don't need to know any more details. The fact that Simon's mom loved it and that it's a historical gothic horror, yes please. The next one I marked as to read just based off the author, and that is The Two Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver. So Josie Silver wrote One Day in December, which I read, I think it was her debut, and I read that and I quite enjoyed it. And then this is her newest release that's coming out, and it deals with one of my favorite tropes in contemporary fiction, or in any kind of fiction, where it's kind of a sliding doors type of situation. But this is a sliding door situation in a bit more of a sad way, it sounds like. It sounds like the main character's fiance has passed, and she's very devastated by that, obviously, and then a situation arises where she is able to live a parallel life where her fiance is still alive. And then I think it's about her having to make a choice between that parallel life where he's still alive, or to stay in her like normal life where her fiance is no longer with us, but her life has moved on, and all of that type of thing. That just sounds very, very interesting. I said I did enjoy Josie Silver's previous book, so I thought I would mark that one as to read. The next one is another one that I had marked as to read, kind of based on the author. I did a review on my channel a really long time ago for a book called Chase the Dark by Annette Marie. It's a YA urban fantasy series. It's the first book, and I read that whole series and really, really, really enjoyed it. It's a very old review. But someone recently commented on that review and were asking me about whether I had read any other Annette Marie, and suggested that I should read this this other series from her that they thought I would really enjoy it. And so the first book in that series is called Three Mages and a Margarita, like I said, by Annette Marie. I don't really know too much about it, except that it's an urban fantasy kind of romance type series, and it follows a main character, I think, who gets a job in a bar, but the bar isn't everything that it seems because it involves mages. And that's all I really know. But like I said, I really did enjoy Annette Marie's previous series that I read by her, so I thought that I would give that one a go. The next one I marked as to read just based purely off the buzz, hearing a lot of people talking about it in recent months, and that is Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. This is a non-fiction story about the kind of criminal justice system in the United States, specifically around wrongfully convicted African-American males. I think one of the main stories that it deals with is a man, or a boy, who was convicted of murder on basically no evidence, was convicted and spent 30 years on death row for a crime that he didn't commit, which is horrifying. And that book has just been getting a lot of buzz. Obviously, there's a movie that's just come out, or is coming out, based on it as well. So like I said, I've been hearing a lot about that, and it did sound like something that I would enjoy, so I marked that as to read. The next book that I marked as to read is one that I heard about from a Bustle article. A Bustle article came up on my Facebook, and it was talking about this book, and it just sounded really interesting because it's called The Liar's Daughter by Megan Cooley Peterson. It's a YA mystery, and it's set around a cult. And I love books set around cults, but the thing that intrigued me about this one in particular is the main character is in the cult, but she believes in the cult. It's not one of those situations where the main character is questioning the cult. She is a believer, 100% a believer. However, then I think the cult gets raided by police or whatever, and then basically she gets returned to her mother, who was not a member of the cult, and you know, she's now living on the outside with everything she's ever hated, that type of situation. Just sounded interesting, so I thought I would give that one a go in future. The next one I heard about from Lauren over at Lauren in the Book. She talked about this book in a book haul, I believe, and it's called The Familiars by Stacey Halls. Another one that just sounds so intriguing to me. It's a historical, and it's about a woman who has not been able to have a baby. I believe that she's had several miscarriages, things like that, but her husband is really pushing her to like keep trying to have a baby because he wants an heir, and she's currently pregnant again when she sees a letter from her doctor, I think, to her husband, basically saying that she won't survive childbirth. And so that is very worrying to her, obviously. And so then she then becomes involved with this midwife who swears to help her deliver the baby healthily for her and the baby. And then the twist comes in that in some way it involves witchcraft, because I believe her and the midwife are then accused of witchcraft. I don't really know under what circumstances, or if it is witchcraft, or if it's just the patriarchy assuming that women and women's health and issues in the way of that, like, must be witchcraft. I don't know. Either way, I'm very intrigued by that. So I marked that one as to read. The next one came from a Goodreads blog post, just one of the ones that they do quite often about books hitting, like, coming up that are hitting shelves soon. And it was a book called The Majesties by Tiffany Sayo. I'm butchering that name, I'm sure. And in the little like blurb that they put up of this book, it was compared to Gillian Flynn, which I love Gillian Flynn, so I was immediately intrigued. And it's about two sisters who are very, very close. However, one sister poisons their entire family, including the other sister. And then it's about that sister who has survived. She's the only one who survives the poisoning of the family. She wakes up from a coma. And then it's about her like dealing with the aftermath of that situation. Just sounded very, very interesting. And the fact that it was compared to Gillian Flynn was enough for me, frankly. The next one is, I marked as to read, is The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. And this is based purely on a book olive talking about Edith Wharton. She talks about Edith Wharton a lot, just generally. And I believe The Age of Innocence is Edith Wharton's most popular book. I really honestly don't know what it's about. It's a classic from the 1920s. I think maybe it won a Pulitzer Prize, or did I make that up? Potentially won a Pulitzer Prize. I said I don't really know what it's about, but I enjoy trying out all different kinds of classics, and this is one that a book olive really raves about, and so I thought, why not? The next one is one that I marked as to read based on hearing just a lot about it on BookTube. Quite a lot of people have talked about it, and I thought it sounded kind of interesting. And then, so I was already, like, it was kind of already on my radar. And then Sam from Thoughts on Tomes did a review of this book. And in that book, she said that it had one of the best sex scenes that she'd ever read. And that intrigued me. So the book is Well Met by Jen DeLuca, which is a romance set around a Renaissance fair. I believe it's like an enemies to lovers type of thing where the main character gets involved in this Renaissance fair, main female character, and the main male character is also in the Renaissance fair, and in everyday life they do not get along. They really, really butt heads, but when they're in their Renaissance fair their characters are involved in a romance. And so that is like already sounded kind of interesting and intriguing. But then, like I said, then when Sam was talking about it, and Sam is not someone who enjoys like a lot of sex scenes in her romance. So for her to then describe this as having one of the best sex scenes she's ever read, I was like, well, what does that mean? Now I need to read it because I need to read that scene. So I marked it as to read. And then the final book that I marked as to read in January was Quiet No More by Nikki Barthelmess. This is one that was recommended to me by one of my subscribers. He recommended it to me on Goodreads, and I'm sure he recommended it to me because the subject matter is something that I talk about quite often that I really enjoy. This is an upcoming release. Like, it doesn't even have a cover. I don't think this comes out until like October-ish of this year. It's a story about a girl who is a sexual assault survivor. I believe she has been sexually assaulted by her father throughout her life. And her father is she's now in college, and her father is being prosecuted for his crimes, when her aunt comes into her life, and her aunt asks her to lie about what her father did to her. And so, like I said, very difficult subject matter, but it is subject matter that I'm always interested in reading when it's done well. So, like I said, one of my subscribers recommended it to me, and I was immediately like, yes, that does sound like something I would enjoy. And so I marked it as to read. So those are all of the books that I marked as to read in January. If you've read any of these books, or if you're pumped for them, let me know down below. If you've got any more recommendations for me, I would love to hear them. If you're recommending a book to me on Goodreads, like through the Goodreads recommendations thing, let me know that you're recommending it to me, because you're recommending it to me, because I get sometimes recommendation requests from people that I'm not like, that I'm friends with obviously on Goodreads, but I'm not like familiar with, that I assume they're just recommending books because they're like recommending them to everyone, like all of their friend list, that it's not like a targeted recommendation for me. So if you are recommending something and it is targeted to me, like let me know, like put in the comments part, like when you're recommending it, that you're recommending it to me for whatever reason or whatever, just so I know that it is to me, and then I'm more likely to look into that book and really look into what it's about and see whether it's something that I'm interested in. So yeah, like I said, always down for more recommendations. That's it, I guess. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye, guys.